Leather hardware are essentially fasteners that are used to join pieces of leather together. Sometimes they are for temporary holds, sometimes they are for more permanent holds, and depending on the type of use, there are all different fasteners available. Some of them include things like snaps, some are rivets, like these. There are also grommets. There are all kinds of finish types, like brass, silver, bronze, gold colored, and all different surface textures as well. You can have softer textures, smoother textures, so there's a whole lot of variation in terms of the fasteners. We won't go into all that because that could be an entire look on its own. So we are going to keep this primarily to what are the key tools needed to secure fasteners and the options that you have available. Along to that, usually application of fasteners can be done manually, or there's also machines that can help you do that. So when we're looking at it manually, there are just a couple different tools. The first is going to be a maul. You could also use a mallet or a hammer. I like the maul just because it kind of concentrates the force towards the end right up here, and it makes it easy and comfortable, to use for most leatherworking tasks. Along with that, we're going to have essentially setting tools, and these are going to vary greatly based on the type of set that you have. This one is a very basic kind, probably the least expensive you can get, and then they also go up in terms of you can get dedicated machines with dedicated presser fixtures for each size rivet that you may be using. So they can basically range easily from a few dollars for a set like this, all the way to a few $100s for the machine, and then $30 to $80 just for each setter head. So you could spend upwards of $1,000 plus to get a full machine setup that can do multiple rivet and snap sizes, or you could do something like this manually. What's important to keep in mind is because this is more manual, there's more variation in how they're going to set, and the consistency is going to be a little different each time you do it, just because it's manual. So there's always a trade-off there. So here we're getting the ability to essentially join leather relatively inexpensively with more variation and a little more skill to learn. If you're using a machine, you're going to have much more consistent application of the hardware. It's going to be easier to do, and basically that's the benefit of that, faster and easier. So looking at our manual method, let's take a look. We basically have our rivets here, and there's a few different parts to the rivet. There's usually going to be this bottom section and then this top section. And so what we'll do is we'll take this base and we'll find the right size that fits our rivet there. And then we've got our leather that we're looking to join. So we'll kind of fold that over, just as an example piece. That'll go over that rivet. And then we're going to take this top part here, and that slides over the top. And then we take the rounded end here, not this one which is rounded out. We want this, which will kind of let this top of the rivet sit in it. And we hold that together, and then we strike it with our maul. And if we look, now the rivet that was originally sticking up is now set, and we've got this piece of leather joined together securely, and for most intents, permanently. Certainly we could pull this apart if we needed, but for the most part, this will stay joined permanently. Depending if you look at the type of rivets that we have, at least in this relatively inexpensive set, there's going to be different sizes. Like this one is going to be much smaller than, say, this one. And so the type of base that you've got will be different. Like here's the smaller side and here's the larger side. And so when you're looking for the proper hardware and the proper tools to set it, just make sure that whatever you are getting will fit the size hardware that you're going to be setting. And this is for rivets. When we take a look at another type of hardware here, our snaps. And so snaps are going to be, mostly the same in how we do it. We're going to have a little bit of a different base for the snaps. We're going to have, similar tools again, but instead of having just a rounded kind of surface that accepts the rivet, this is going to be a little deeper just to accept, the specific shape of that snap hardware. And then similarly, we have the pieces that will create the snap portion. And then we have the other side, the snap itself that will then go into it. Snaps have an additional layer of basically a step to put in that additional piece, but it's essentially functioning the same in that we've got a base, we secure it with a tool that holds it, and then we strike it, with our striking tool. So again, setting all these could be, a walkthrough on its own with the different tips and approaches to it, so we won't go into that here. This is more to show you that for the most common hardware, rivets and snaps, this is the general approach and tools that you need to do it. It's pretty simple. If you're just starting out, it's totally normal to mess up a few in the beginning. So you can use some scrap leather. What I typically do is take some scrap, just punch some holes in it, and just practice like we did earlier, making that work and getting it nice and centered. You'll learn the feel for how much force you're going to need, and after a couple, it'll be as if you've been doing it for a long time. So that is, basically rivets and snaps in terms of the tools that are needed for manual setting of them. There are also another tool called a hand press setter machine. So as you're doing more hardware setting and you're looking for something more consistent, this is going to be great. It's generally a hand press machine where you're using the leverage of your hand to generate the force through the tool to then set, your hardware. They work great for snaps and rivets and eyelets and grommets, and it pretty much makes it a much easier, more consistent and faster process. If you do have a hand press setter machine, they're pretty strong. It can be beneficial to mount them to whatever desk you're working on. That way they stay secure, but it's not always necessary depending on your setup. And it's definitely a way to save time during production if you're doing a lot of hardware setting in your work. A variation of that is the foot press machine. And so where the first one that we saw is you're using your arm and your hand to press down, over time, that can be stressful on the joints up there, especially if you're doing hundreds, or maybe even thousands of hardware settings a day. So a foot press machine essentially takes the force, and it's mechanically connected to a large foot pedal. And when you press the foot pedal, that transfers the force through to the machine and then applies the, the hardware securing, motion that would have been done otherwise by hand. So when looking for hardware, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One, like anything, you want quality tools, especially in your setters. And so these may work well, for basic items. If you're looking to do, work with a tighter fit and finish, you may want to look for more refined hardware for that. There's some great manufacturers out there that make, very high quality hardware that will last, decades, if not longer. And so along with that, they usually sell setting tools that match their hardware. So you get a really good fit. Like for example, here, we've got this general setting base, and this rivet. Some manufacturers will make a setting base specific to a rivet head size. And so you're going to get a very tight fit, very little motion, which will result in a smoother setting process. And also you won't have any kind of dings. You can kind of see here, you won't have any kind of dings or blemishes to your rivet from the process, which may happen with other methods. So basically look for a quality manufacturer, and then also look for their unique setting hardware if they have it. It isn't always necessary at all, but if you're looking to do a pretty consistent and high quality fit and finish across the board, that can be a positive place to look. That said, of course, you could use basic means to do these. It's been done for decades, if not centuries, just like that. Yeah, keep it organized, because if you spill these together, it's going to take forever to try to sort them in a project. So find an easy way that works for you and your shop. Keep them organized and accessible. And then, yeah, use quality with hardware where possible. Usually the price difference is not that significant, but the look and feel in your finished product, it'll speak a lot to it. So where possible, buy better hardware. And there's a couple good manufacturers out there, especially in the leatherworking space, that'll give you some beautiful, amazing hardware. And there you have it, the hardware and the manual ways to set it. If you've done this before and like to share some of your experiences, we'd love to hear about them. And until next time, keep crafting.